You've probably noticed how biblical stories are everywhere in our culture. Whether you're religious or not, just mention one, and most people will know what you're talking about. For a long
Now, this is quite a discovery. Fragments of a biblical scroll.
Very unique, and it's one of the biggest technical challenges.
And you sort of get a sense of the excitement and sense of discovery.
For a long time, though, many have wondered if these ancient tales are really true. After all, the Bible was written over centuries by different authors, often long after the events were supposed to have taken place. This has attracted many debates about how historically accurate the Bible actually is. But then something incredible came to light in recent years. Scientists and researchers began to uncover evidence that suggests some of these stories people have passed down for millennia, might not just be myths. One of the most shocking discoveries is the recent proof of the night, when, according to the Bible, a single angel wiped out 185,000 enemy soldiers. It took over 2,700 years to find the evidence, and we'll explain everything in just 10 minutes. In 1 Chronicles 21:15, the same angel of the Lord is seen by David to stand between the earth and the heaven, with a drawn sword in his hand stretched out against the Hebrews' enemies. Later in 2 Kings 19:35, the angel kills 185,000 Assyrian soldiers. The story starts with a time of unrest in ancient kingdoms, where a young leader named Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz, rose to power. He took the throne of Judah at the age of 25 around 715 BC, following his father's death. But this wasn't just another royal succession. Hezekiah was different because of his deep commitment to the God of Israel. Right from the beginning of his reign, Hezekiah had an unusual dedication to his faith. One of his first major moves was a passionate mission to restore the temple in Jerusalem. Understanding how important the temple was, he set out to cleanse it of any signs of idolatry. Pagan altars were torn down, and idols that had led the people astray were removed. Hezekiah didn't just get rid of the false gods, he also re-established true worship in the temple, bringing back rituals and practices that honored the God of Israel. His goal was to bring back the spiritual purity that had been lost. He boldly confronted long-standing practices that had led the people away from their divine purpose, and his leadership changed the ways of worship in the temple and also sparked a spiritual revival among the people of Judah. But the story then takes a curious turn with a bronze serpent Moses had set up during the Exodus, as described in the book of Numbers. In the start, this serpent was tied to miraculous healing. Those who venomous snakes bit could look at the bronze figure and be healed. But over time, this bronze serpent, now called Nehushtan, became an idol. Instead of being a symbol of faith in God's healing power, it became something people worshipped, breaking the very principle of worshiping only one God. In response to this act of faith, the Lord of Jews blessed Hezekiah, showing once again that he honors those who seek him with all their heart. But Hezekiah's actual faith test was yet to come. In a time of political instability and constant threats, the leading authority of Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, was seen in Judah's borders. During this era, nations were often defined by their military might, and Sennacherib led the powerful Assyrian Empire, known for its brutal army and military precision. As Sennacherib pushed forward, city after city in Judah fell to his forces, leaving destruction in their wake. But his true prize, the jewel of the region, was Jerusalem. Hezekiah, the God-fearing king, found himself trapped by the looming Assyrian threat. In an effort to avoid conflict, he sought a peaceful resolution, trying to convince Sennacherib to back off from attacking Jerusalem. Desperate, Hezekiah offered a massive tribute, gathering treasures from the temple and the palace in Jerusalem. The tribute was immense, over 10 tons of silver and more than a ton of gold. He wanted to protect the sacred city, and in his pursuit of peace, Hezekiah was willing to part with these invaluable treasures to save his people and their capital. But Sennacherib's response showed the arrogance typical of conquerors in that era. He dismissed the offer, openly mocking both Hezekiah and the God of Israel. His words were defiant, boasting that just as the gods of other conquered nations couldn't stop him, neither could the God of Israel. This insult only worsened the tension and made it clear that only divine help could save them now. So faced with the immense rejection of his peace attempts, Hezekiah turned to the one source that could deliver him. He placed his trust in the Lord and prayed for guidance. As the Assyrian army approached, Hezekiah endured a period of deep uncertainty and fear. The Bible describes his initial reaction of grief. He tore his clothes and wore sackcloth, traditional signs of mourning in Jewish culture at the time. Though his heart was filled with despair, his faith did not waver. As the threat of invasion darkened Jerusalem, Hezekiah refused to give in to hopelessness. Instead, he sought God's help. He went to the temple of the Lord to worship, seeking the presence of God during this time. Hezekiah even sought divine guidance through the prophet Isaiah. He sent a delegation to the prophet, all of them dressed in sackcloth as a sign of humility and desperation. In this intense moment of distress, Isaiah, chosen by God as his messenger, brought a powerful message to the king. Isaiah, following God's direction, spoke words of comfort and hope to Hezekiah. "Do not be afraid of what you've heard, the words with which the servants of the Assyrian king have insulted me. I will make him return the way he came." These words from Isaiah were like a soothing balm to Hezekiah's troubled heart. The Lord, through his prophet, promised protection and supernatural intervention. And then he knew Jerusalem would not fall into the hands of the Assyrians. He knew that his requests would not be disregarded by the God in whom he had placed his faith. Furthermore, Isaiah foretold that Sennacherib would return to his homeland and be killed by the sword. This assurance not only reassured Hezekiah, but also secured his faith. Now, despite the enormous danger, Hezekiah chose to trust in God's word delivered through Isaiah. This trust went beyond military tactics. It was a full surrender to the God who controls all destinies. The next day, the situation seemed bleak. The walls of Jerusalem saw the presence of the Assyrian army, led by Sennacherib. As night fell, with only the distant sounds of the Assyrian camp breaking the silence, a heavenly intervention took place. The Lord sent his angel, a being of light and power, to confront the enemy army. And only in a single night, this angel struck down 185,000 Assyrian soldiers. The battle wasn't fought with human weapons or strategies, but through the supernatural force of God's angel. Thus, the promise delivered by Isaiah was being fulfilled. If you're enjoying this journey into the mysteries of an ancient site found, please like and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us grow our channel and bring you fascinating stories and more mind-blowing discoveries. Plus, it keeps you updated on all our latest videos, so stay tuned for even more incredible content. Back to our story. The next morning, as the people of Jerusalem went out, they saw the results of this miraculous intervention. Where the Assyrian army's tents once stood, 185,000 lifeless bodies now lay. It was an undeniable sign of God's undeniable power, showing that he had not only heard Hezekiah's desperate prayers, but had acted with overwhelming strength to save his people. During the night, the silence of the battlefield was broken by whispers of shock and gratitude. Every lifeless body was proof of the supernatural event that had turned what seemed like certain disaster into a miracle. Meanwhile, Sennacherib's fate took an unexpected turn. Despite the miracle and the defeat of his army, the Assyrian king managed to escape. After his failed attack on Jerusalem and mocking the God of Israel, he returned to Nineveh. However, his end wasn't what he had planned. While worshiping in his own temple, he was killed by his own sons, Adramelech and Sharezer. The Bible tells us that they attacked him with swords during his time of worship. After 2,500 years, Stephen Compton, an independent scholar with a focus on Near Eastern archaeology, has applied modern mapping methods to trace what he believes could be the remains of the Assyrian military base mentioned in these biblical accounts. His research, published in the June edition of Near Eastern Archaeology, showed the historical record of Sennacherib's campaign. Compton found these possible sites by looking at ancient carvings from Sennacherib's palace in Nineveh, which is now Mosul in northern Iraq, and comparing them with aerial photos from the early 20th century. These carvings show the siege of Lachish, a city located 42 miles south of Jerusalem, and include detailed pictures of an Assyrian military camp. By cross-checking these images with the photos, Compton located an oval-shaped structure north of Lachish that matches the typical design of Assyrian camps. This site, called Khirbet al-Mudawara, means the ruins of the camp of the invading ruler in Arabic, suggesting its historical military importance. At another site close to Jerusalem, known as Jebel el-Mudawara, or Ammunition Hill, Compton found similar oval fortifications. Initially thought to be a Roman camp because of its layout, further studies showed that its design was actually consistent with Assyrian military encampments, which were oval in shape, unlike the rectangular layouts of Roman camps. The Assyrian Empire, which governed from 1365 to 609 BCE, was known for its extensive military campaigns and its desire to expand its territory. In 701 BCE, Sennacherib's siege of Jerusalem was a component of a broader initiative to regulate major routes from the Syrian desert to the Mediterranean. While Compton's findings might not convince everyone about the miraculous parts of the biblical story, they definitely show that Assyrian military forces were really present near Jerusalem during Sennacherib's reign. If you like this video, please consider subscribing. Do you believe this Bible story to be real, or do you know of any other proof to it? If you have any miracle stories to share, we'd love to hear them in the comments.